Welcome to The Explainer. Look, we're jumping right into a rapidly evolving situation today that is actively threatening the 2026 World Cup in the US. We're breaking down this highly complex, entirely fan-led boycott movement that is just gaining incredible traction all over the world right now. It's a truly fascinating scenario, and it really marks a potential turning point in how global sporting events operate. So let's unpack exactly what the sources are telling us.
But first, think about this for a second. What is the absolute biggest threat to the 2026 World Cup right now? Now, historically, when we look at threats to these massive international tournaments, we usually think of things like logistical failures, huge infrastructure delays, or even those formal government withdrawals we saw back during the Cold War era Olympics. Well, get ready for a major paradigm shift here. The source data actually reveals that the greatest threat to this colossal event isn't coming from state actors or geopolitical embargoes, and it's definitely not coming from politicians in suits, no way. It's actually coming from everyday global fans. The power dynamic is literally shifting from the top down right to the ground up. Okay, let's dive into this. Our roadmap today covers 5 key areas. First, the looming 2026 boycott. Second, safety and federal crackdowns. Third, the controversy over the Peace Prize. Fourth, FIFA's double standards. And finally, the power of individual choice.
Starting off with Section 1, the looming 2026 boycott.
Guys, what we're seeing play out right now is honestly unprecedented in modern sports history. We've got several very distinct controversies weaving together, creating this powerful grassroots movement. Basically, the foundation of this whole thing rests on 2 totally separate pillars. You've got intense political controversy on one side, and then very tangible physical safety concerns on the other. Now, usually, a boycott is driven by one big overriding issue, right? But here, it's the unique compounding effect of these 2 completely different elements colliding that's catching organizing committees totally off guard. It's creating a perfect storm for the 2026 tournament because it massively broadens the base of frustrated fans. Some are staying away out of ideological protest, while others, well, they're staying away purely out of a desire for self-preservation.
And just so we're clear on definitions here, in this specific context, a boycott doesn't mean nations are refusing to send their national teams to play. The athletes, they'll likely still be on the pitch. No, we're talking about a widespread, individual choice by global fans to voluntarily stay away from the tournament. This means everyday fans are actively deciding not to buy match tickets, they're canceling hotel reservations, and they're holding on to their tourist dollars. It's a decentralized, totally organic pushback driven by normal people making personal, financial, and travel choices, rather than some formal top-down government mandate. And honestly, because it's so decentralized, it makes it incredibly difficult for organizing bodies to combat or negotiate with. There's no single leader you can just pull into a room to appease.
Moving right along to Section 2, safety and federal crackdowns.
So, to truly grasp why fans are staying away, we need to objectively look at the tangible, day-to-day realities deterring these international supporters, and the source material points directly to 2 specific factors. First up, there have been widespread reports of violent incidents occurring right within the designated host cities. Now, when fans from abroad see headlines detailing safety risks in the exact metropolitan areas slated to host these matches, naturally it breeds a lot of hesitation. Second, the reporting highlights an intensified federal crackdown on immigration currently happening in the United States. For an international fan planning a major, expensive overseas trip, this translates into some pretty heightened anxieties. We're talking worries about visa processing delays, potential friction at the border, and just a general overarching concern about how welcoming the environment will actually be. These are serious, real-world, logistical, and personal safety questions that families simply can't ignore when they're plotting out a multi-thousand-dollar vacation. And it's not just fans talking. When former FIFA president Sepp Blatter publicly advises fans to avoid the tournament, well, that really highlights just how high up this concern actually goes. Regardless of what you might think of Blatter personally, the sheer fact that a former head of the organizing body is issuing a public warning like this, it absolutely underscores the severity of the situation. It totally validates the anxiety being felt by everyday supporters. It's a striking detail from our sources that really bridges the gap between, say, internet rumors and highly visible institutional-level caution.
Which brings us to Section 3, controversy over the Peace Prize.
Okay, so we've covered the ground-level safety concerns. Now let's look at the institutional triggers that are just pouring absolute fuel on this fire. A major institutional trigger point occurred when FIFA recently made the decision to award a quote-unquote Peace Prize to Donald Trump.
Now, maintaining our strict journalistic impartiality here, we aren't here to endorse or condemn the move either way. But the sources clearly highlight this single action as a primary catalyst for the backlash. It instantly injected a massive layer of political friction into the lead-up to the World Cup. As we all know, whenever global sports and high-stakes politics collide, it tends to alienate certain segments of the international fan base, and this particular event, it proved to be a highly effective lightning rod for organized fan pushback.
Specifically, critics of this decision argue that awarding this prize ignores the administration's divisive policies and its human rights record. By attributing these points directly to those critics, our sources are showing exactly why this decision has become such a massive flashpoint for international fans. For these supporters, participating in the tournament, buying tickets, buying merchandise, it feels like an implicit endorsement of a political stance they fundamentally disagree with. So it essentially transforms a simple sporting event into a moral dilemma, which further drives the calls for this individual boycott and expands the whole movement way beyond just those safety concerns we talked about earlier.
Let's shift to Section 4, FIFA's double standards.
We really can't look at this boycott in a vacuum. Historical context, institutional history, it's all playing a massive role in the sheer frustration fans are currently feeling toward the governing body. Our sources point out a massive discrepancy here. On one hand, you have FIFA's current refusal to ban certain nations involved in controversies. On the other hand, you have their documented past precedents of banning nations in very similar situations. And this brilliantly illustrates the heavy accusations of hypocrisy critics are leveling against the organization. Think about it, when an institution has a documented history of stepping in to enforce a moral or political standard, but then selectively refuses to apply those exact same rules in current contexts, it shatters trust. It essentially makes fans feel like the rules are just constantly changing depending on who's hosting the event or, which geopolitical interests are at stake. And that leads to some deep-seated cynicism.
Finally, Section 5, the power of individual choice.
So let's pull all these narrative threads together, the ground-level safety issues, the political awards, the alleged double standards, and bring it right back to you, the individual, to look at the sheer power of widespread grassroots action. The sources indicate that thousands of international supporters coming from completely unrestricted nations have already voluntarily canceled their tickets. Thousands. They aren't being forced to stay home by their governments. They are actively choosing to stay home, citing a perceived lack of safety and just a profound disagreement with institutional decisions. Now sure, in the context of massive stadiums that seat 80,000 people, a few thousand early cancellations might seem like a total drop in the bucket. But make no mistake, these are leading indicators. They represent a real canary in the coal mine for hospitality, local tourism, and global broadcasting optics. It's an incredible display of consumer choice hitting the organizing bodies exactly where it hurts the most, the bottom line.
The big thing you should ultimately take away from this explainer is that the ultimate power lies in widespread individual choice. The dynamic in international sports is fundamentally shifting right before our eyes. Governing bodies like FIFA have traditionally held all the cards, right? They dictate terms from the top down with this built-in assumption that fans will just show up regardless of the circumstances. But now, through their collective financial choices, fans are proving that without their active attendance and their enthusiasm, the biggest tournament in the world simply cannot function as intended. An empty seat? That is a highly visible protest broadcast to billions. Fans are really waking up to the fact that they are the actual engine of the event. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to ponder as we wrap up today. Will the shifting power dynamic from governing bodies to individual fans forever change the future of international events? Honestly, if this 2026 boycott holds its momentum, we might just be witnessing the dawn of a completely new era in global sports, one where the fan is truly the one in charge. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today. Keep questioning the world around you, and I'll see you on the next one.